Hello, all the crazy people out there. My name is Michael. I like wizards and dragons and making games. Welcome back to Making Bullet Hell Games in GameMaker. So it is now the present day. I recorded the first dozen videos in the series ahead of time because I honestly wanted to, and I decided to restrain myself from posting more until those videos were actually posted, so that I could respond to comments and thoughts that people had on the matter. And it is now the present day. It is now May of 2022. A couple of GameMaker updates have come out since then, including one in particular, the time sources, which I'd like to spend a little bit of time integrating into the game. First, let's see. Do I have the game open? I have the game open. Okay. Fancy. So, responding to comments, and I'm going to try and do this somewhat regularly and not go like 3 months between doing this. Starting with the important ones. Name suggestion for this game, Buggy as Hell. And the user who wrote this in, Kenty, specifically requested that is followed by an exclamation mark, which I say I wish I was clever enough to think of that. In fact, just to make sure that I'm not gonna forget that, let me go on to... I think I'll dump this in the backlog, but let's write down a little task. Buddy as hell. That's an interesting mental image. As well as a little line to remind me who wrote that one in. Next, someone pointed out that the social media for Hack and Plane is very sporadically active. If you go into the tweets and replies section of the Hack and Plane Twitter, you occasionally find a little bit more activity than just on their main feed. This project is still alive. It doesn't seem to be in super active development, but it is still alive. I get the feeling that it's only being run by one or two people. But that's the status of my project management tool for now. I hope it's still alive. I've come to like it in the 3 months or whatever it's been since I've been doing this. A user who only goes by the username of 12 asked, how do I plan on handling bullet patterns? I recommend GameMaker coroutines from Juju Adams. In addition, they want to do a Russian localization for the game, which I mentioned translations a few times recently, so hopefully I will have an answer for you on that second part soon-ish. So I've worked on bullet patterns already by this point in history, and they are pretty much 100% just math equations. You could model them on Desmos or something if you wanted to. Something that has come out since I was working on those was the GameMaker time source system, which has been added to the beta.
Hey.
One of the code maintenance things that I do want to do today is to integrate the GameMaker time sources into the game, into the bullet spawning, and I guess other places where they might be applicable. I've never been a huge fan of coroutines in general, and in particular in GameMaker, no offense to Juju Adams, but I really don't like syntax extensions to GameMaker. I know some people do, and if you like to do macro hacks to make syntax extensions in GameMaker work, that's great, but taking one scripting language and trying to force it to behave as another scripting language really doesn't do it for me. And this is speaking as someone who tried to do a lot of functional programming things in GML when 2.3 first came out. If you want to use Juju's coroutines or something similar for bullet patterns in a bullet hell game of your own, by all means go for it, but I am not going to have anything to do with that. At least not beyond time sources. Let's see, Carl has pointed out that you are always making a game in 3 dimensions, X, Y, and time. And no arguments from me there, although some people may take offense to calling time a dimension. A lot of people have been asking why I like to prefix everything, or at least almost everything, with the self keyword in GameMaker, and that's because the short version is I prefer to make it explicit what an instance variable belongs to whenever possible. Whether that's another reference to another instance or reference to my own instance, reference to the current instance. That's partially because, as you can see on display right here, GameMaker's syntax highlighting just breaks all the time. And if it's not highlighted in the color of a local variable or of a parameter like this, how do you know what the scope of bullet is in this case, in this code block, without having to look at it if it's not prefixed with something like self dot. And also just because, and I didn't always do this, but God, it's really broken here. I don't know why GameMaker's been so weird about syntax highlighting in the last few versions. That's the main reason, and also there's just the matter that I get like fairly particular about code style, and specifying the scope of an instance variable has been increasingly one of those things. Again, I didn't always do this. If you look back at the the old tower defense videos that I made, especially at the beginning, I didn't really make an effort to do that, but in probably the last year and a half, I definitely have been. Ron Briscoe would like to remind me that the outside room event exists for things such as bullets. Where are bullets? Where's the bullet superclass? Instead of putting in the step event, something like this, if self.x is less than room width, or whatever that is, whatever I said, you could just use the event's other outside room, and the only reason I didn't do that is because I totally forgot it exists. If I were to write this from scratch now, I probably would. The only reason I'm not going to change it now is because that this already works, and I don't want to touch it and have to spend 5 minutes making sure that I didn't mess it up somewhere. Some more people asking about self-dot. Someone asked about putting, I believe this comment was in reference to various like damage calculations and that sort of thing in the create event of like foes and the player and stuff. This is an object-oriented programming thing. These are methods that belong to instances of a class. When you call them later, when you call these methods later, you can call onDamage on any instance of an object that has an onDamage method, and the implementation won't matter. It's just the method interface that matters. As you can probably see in the video, since this person left this comment, this is something that I do a lot of. And whenever a bullet hits anything, it'll just call its onDamage method, and it won't really care what type of object it is. That's that design pattern. There are definitely other design patterns you could use to make games. In days of old, one might have used something like the user events to do this kind of thing, but since spring of 2020, when 2.3 came out in beta, this is definitely the simpler alternative to using user events in GameMaker. Oh, this is an interesting one. It turns out that in Windows Calculator, and I have to say, when I started doing this, I did not expect to learn new things about Windows Calculator, but exponentiation is this one, and I think this came up when I was doing like the drop odds or something like that, and trying to like figure out what the odds of something dropping over like X number of enemies was, and I was doing something like 0.05 times 0.05 times on and on and on, and trying to do some probabilities that way. But one, there is a button for exponentiation, which I'm not entirely sure how I missed. So if I were to say 0.05, so 1/20th raised to the third power, that would be much easier than whatever I did before. And also there is a keyboard shortcut, and does if I hover my mouse over a button, it doesn't show a tooltip or anything, but if I say 0.05 Y3, that would just be a keyboard shortcut, which might be a little faster. So that's very interesting. Thank you for that. Ilyana HM wants to know, is using the draw GUI event just not recommended? I feel like it solves a lot of problems. And then a minute later, that comment was edited to say, wait, sorry, I'm dumb and somehow didn't know you were using it. For the most part, you answered your own question there, although for what it's worth, the draw GUI event isn't without its issues. As you saw, probably like half of the first video in which I was setting up UI stuff was spent trying to get the GUI layer to cooperate with the screen size. It does indeed solve a lot of problems, but it also, if you try to do scaling on like your game window and you're not careful about which scaling functions you use and you use the wrong one, it could make things worse instead of better, so you do have to watch out for that. Write an inventory like Lineage 2 game, I am not 100% sure what that has to do with bullet hell games, but the reason that I do bring this comment up in this in this video is because I do want to eventually, like, make videos on inventory systems in GameMaker. Obviously, that won't be now. A game like this is going to have a minimal, if any, sort of, like, player inventory, but that is something that I'd like to do eventually. So, let's see. I think I can close most of these windows, and then we're going to actually start working on game dev things. Let's see. I'll just run the I'll just run the game right now to make sure that everything is in working order, and it looks like it is. There's not a whole lot of complicated code running in this game right now. I don't really have reason to believe that anything would, like, go wrong in any of the updates since. Why are these sprites changing out of nowhere? I don't know why you're going from, like, the regular enemy sprite. Unless I layered multiple enemies on top of each other or something like that. That might have been it. I have to check that eventually. So if I open up GitHub and go to lmag bullet hell, I seriously need to think of a better acronym for this because, like, it's fine when I'm just writing it down in, like, my notebook or whatever, future things to do, but to say lmag out loud really is kind of like it doesn't sound like anything. It doesn't sound like a word. I am going to, as I often do when GameMaker updates, push a commit that says updated GameMaker. Again, it's been since 2.3.7 since I worked on this. Let's see, what has been introduced to GameMaker since then? Time sources are probably the biggest thing and the most relevant thing. I thought about instance creation parameters a little bit in places where, for example, the player shoots a bullet or whatever in the shoot method over here. There are a few places where, like, X speed, Y speed, friendly, damage, various properties of the spawn's bullet could be set with an instance creation parameter, but I honestly don't think that it would really improve the code any to do that. That instance creation parameter feature is really kind of just an alternate, like, method to do something that you may or may not personally prefer to doing it this way with the dot operator.
Hey.
Any difference in performance would be negligible because it's only a few individual lines of code. Boy, I'm looking through my list of, like, GameMaker new and beta features videos on the side just to make sure that there's not something that I'm forgetting about. Video playback was added, obviously, since the beginning of the series. I am not interested in doing video playback in this game, and it looks like that's those are the main things. So let me go into any of the entity objects, and I'll close room 0 for now. Let's see. Entities on their own don't have a shoot method. That is something that belongs to the player class and the enemy class. Like, default enemies that do nothing but sit there kind of can't shoot. And there's a couple of cooldowns related to that. There is the shot cooldown. There is the sub-weapon cooldown, and there's the iframe cooldown. And oh, there's also cooldowns related to, like, buffs and stuff. Okay. So there's actually quite a few of these here, and to boot, should I want to add another effect cooldown later? At the current moment, if I wanted to do that, if I want to add another buff that wears off after a period of time, I would have had to write code in a few different places, and instead, what I think I will do is replace all of these, like, cooldowns minus equal DT with just a time source. And again, this is the sort of thing you could do with coroutines if you are a person who likes coroutines, but I am not a person who likes coroutines, so I will not be using those. Let's see. This is going to be a bit of a chore. I'm going to need to track down every place in the game where this is assigned. And let's see, all the different foe types do have their own, like, shooting system, so they all have this defined independently. But I'll start with the player. I'm going to, instead of having a shots cooldown variable, let's say self dot shot enabled, and that's going to default to true. And then I'm also going to have self dot shot sub enabled. And that's also going to default to true. And actually, this might stay because I kind of want to have the visual of like the shot timer charging up, like the shot charge level, whereas it's not really super important to the regular shot because it comes out something like every 10 frames, 6 times a second. So we're gonna make shot enabled a value, and I'm also going to have that in the basically the faux base class, and that's just gonna live like. Was that defined in No, that wasn't defined in here. This is just gonna live in over there, right? Right. And let's see. Again, I'll start with the player, but instead of saying when you shoot something, shot cooldown equals 1 over shots per second, this is going to be a time source create. This is going to be parented to time source global. The period is going to be 1 over shots per second because this is already in terms of seconds because I wrote it to be fake delta timed earlier. Units is going to be time source units seconds, and the callback is going to be self.shot enabled equals true. That was it, right? This is not the player code. Okay, this is the faux code. I want to go in the player code. Where's the player? There's gonna be a. Guess I can maximize this. There's going to be a shoot method in the player as well, and that's basically the same thing, except it also needs to take into account the fire rate buff, which can add a reduction to the shot cooldown time. Okay, that's great. So that's one. However, we're going to need to say capture this in a variable. Let's say var source equals this time source start. And because we need to track this, because these won't be automatically destroyed when they're finished, I'm going to, I think, let's say in the entity superclass, we can, and I'm going to make this a ds list create. I'm going to make a list of timers, right? A list of time sources, and instead of trying to track individual time sources, like this is the time source that determines the shot cooldown, or this is the time source that determines when you should stop being on fire, or something like that. I'm just going to have a list of timers that are maintained. And let's see. In the cleanup event, I'm going to do a few things to do memory management things. One is going to be looping GameMaker. Hello? Stop, please. Looping over that list and time source destroying every element in that list, and then we can ds list destroy. You could use an array for this. You could use array push, and then the array would be garbage collected on its own, and you wouldn't have to ds list destroy the list of timers. But since we have to iterate over everything in it anyway and manually destroy everything in it, I'm pretty okay with having the timer list be a DS list like this that isn't garbage collected. Some might make the argument that it's slightly more efficient to do this because giving the garbage collector more work will mean that the garbage collector takes more time to run, but unless you're planning on having several thousand foes on screen at once, that probably won't really be an issue either way. Next. Let's see. In something like this, ds, we now need to add the time source to the list of time sources to track. Ds list add self.timers source, and now we're going to pay attention to what these time sources are doing. It might be worth, because a lot of this is going to be, and this really should be time source game. I foresee myself writing this somewhat long function call, time source create, a few times. I'm going to abstract this away, and in the faux create event, we can say, we can define ourselves our own method, self.set timer. I guess if you really want to be JavaScripty, you can say set time out, but to keep the language consistent, we'll just say set timer. And this, all we really need are two parameters. One can be a duration, and one can be a callback. And then we can just call the same code, but the relevant parameters will be included like this. Okay, so now what we need to do is, on any given entity, on the player, on a faux, whatever, say self.setTimer with the duration and the desired callback. Everything else is going to be the same always. All right. I did say in that time sources video that I wanted to put some of those theories into practice. How am I doing on time? How on earth have I been recording for 35 minutes? I know I took a little while to get started between when I hit record and when I started talking, but that was it's a bit much. Hang on. What am I doing? Self.setTimer, the duration can be this, and the callback can be that. And okay, that's a lot less code than we had before. Very nice. Let's see. This is, I can get rid of everything related to shot cooldown here. I can also, I can really call the same code in pretty much all of the like the faux shoot methods and all that. There's a few methods that are like can shoot sub, can shoot, and this needs to just simply, I'm gonna leave these as accessor methods. This is just gonna simply be a wrapper for self.shot enabled at the moment. I've entertained the idea of adding like a paralysis debuff or something like that that would also factor into whether or not you can shoot, even if your shot cooldown has expired. And if I were to eventually implement a feature, or whatever the opposite of a feature is like that, that would also get folded into can shoot like this. I'll leave can shoot sub alone. Next, I would like to do something similar to that here. And instead of saying self.buff fire rate over shots per second, it's just going to be 1 over shots per second, because enemies in general are not going to have a fire rate buff, because that would stop being funny and probably just start being extremely annoying after a while. We can call that there, and if I search for any other instances of shot cooldown, case sensitive, whole word only, ignore comments please. Okay. Just going to remove any remaining references to the shot cooldown. That's not there anymore. Why did the search and replace think it was there? Remove that cooldown in there. GameMaker is refusing to save the changes to this event. This is extremely annoying. Why are we doing that? God, I hate this bug.
Hey.
This didn't save any of my changes, did it? Alright, there we go. And the create event is also showing that issue. GameMaker, why are you like this? I really want to report this bug because it's been in GameMaker for a few versions now, except I can't reproduce it. It happens randomly. I don't know how to replicate the error. Let's see. What are other things that are on the fake Delta timer system? So, things like fire damage cooldown. Alright, things like this. So, the fire buff is also one of these. And I feel like at this point, since I've already shown how I'm going to do this, I should just cut away and do this like later, because this is starting to go on for a little while. But I'll do one more. At least one more. Alright, so I was about to make some other changes with regard to some of the countdown timers, such as, for example, buff_fire cooldowns, or buff_recursive bullet durations, but I kind of don't want to do that, because as I realized shortly after I started making those changes, you could have multiple of those buffs stacking, and if you try to set timers for that, then it could get really weird, and I don't think I want to deal with that. At the moment, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Things like player shot cooldowns could definitely be simplified a little by introducing time systems, but some of the other ones not necessarily. This is possibly a case where you might make the argument that spinning your own dedicated time systems is will make your life easier than if you try to adopt GameMaker's.
Hey.
Especially if you've already written it. There is, however, a few other timers that are independent of the game. Independent of, like, gameplay anyway. One is going to be the wave timer. Another is going to be the score multiplier timer, and this is like how long you get before your score multiplier starts going down. This should probably be left alone for the same reason, in that when you defeat an enemy, your score multiplier timer will get reset, and if you use a time source for that, there isn't a super easy way to do that. There is time source reset, but then you're really kind of getting into the weeds that I don't want to get into, especially since this system already works. The wave timer, however, if I get rid of this, I feel like I could reduce a few of the dangly bits of the code by, for example, making the wave timer an actual timer that's going to tick down. And now that I'm typing it out, I think I won't change that either. I think I'll just run with the same with the original system, because there are a number of places that I'd have to rewrite code. And the wave timer system is already otherwise finished, so changing that wouldn't really give me any nice advantages the way that changing the shot cooldown timer would, because that's as I implement other enemies in the future, I will be doing more with the shot cooldowns and other gameplay systems like that, but I probably won't be doing anything more to the wave duration. Okay, so that's that. I will make an observation that I can, if I really wanted to take the time source system a little bit farther, instead of putting the can shoot method in the entity foe step event or whatever, and doing like this, you could just create a time source in the create event for enemy shots, and then just on that interval, just every second or every half of a second or whatever it happens to be, just set the timer for that interval and then just put the shooting code in that timer. But considering that there are a few other things that you might do that might bail out of the step event before that happens, I kind of don't want to touch that, at least not right now. And in any case, I have set it up so that hopefully I don't have to touch enemy step events anyway. I can just write a little can shoot method here, and it's all the same to me. So that's just some food for thought. Alright, did I make any changes? I did commit the one change to the player shot cooldowns. This, by the way, what I just said is more or less what the one comment at the beginning of the video was referring to when they were talking about using code routines for bullet patterns, and I said I wasn't interested. Again, I entertain the idea here, but ultimately I've kind of already written the code to have this run, and it already works, and I don't really feel the need to change it because I shouldn't have to touch it again, other than to just implement new can shoot methods or something like that. So I haven't actually run the game in a really long time, have I? Entity fo.shot enabled, not set before reading it. That is an important thing to include. All right, this is why you run your game before committing changes, especially if you're refactoring things. Shot enabled. This should just be a simple matter of defining this in the fo base class. Something like this. Yeah. Set timer. Are you not inheriting from... Hang on a minute. Self.set timer. This should be inherited from entity. We are calling our inherited method. The invoke inherited method thing. Entity. Where did I define... Did I define this in the wrong create event or something like... Oh, you know what happened? Oh, for the love of God. You know what happened is... This didn't save because GameMaker had a moment. And I'm going to have to write this out again from scratch. Alright, I wrote that out again. Fun. And the cleanup event is fine, right? Okay, the cleanup event is fine. Can we run the game without anything bad happening now? That last one wasn't my fault. That last one was totally GameMaker's fault. Okay, so I'm forgetting one crucial thing, and that is I need to actually set... I need to actually set shot enable to false, because setting the timer on its own will not do that. Oh, okay. Did I forget to remove that? Did that... What happened there? This is the bullets create event. That was from when I was messing around with... Oh, for God's sake. This is this video is just a master class in why you test your code before you commit it. Alright. Shots are working, shot cooldowns are working. That's pretty fantastic. So... Let's see... Now I think I can take this. There is one more thing I need to do, which is that now when I pause the game, you can see the timing of the bullet gets messed up because the time source continues to tick down. So what I am going to need to do is when you pause the game, we're going to want to time source pause time source underscore game. That's what everything is parented to. And when you unpause the game, we're going to want a time source start. And that's pretty nice. It's pretty nice that we're able to do that. It's pretty nice that time sources allow us to do that. And if I pause the game for a duration of time, the timing mechanisms... Did you get... You're shooting faster than before. That's new. I feel like you're shooting twice as fast as before. Hang on. I feel like something has gone dreadfully wrong here. Alright, I know what's going on. So, when I say time source start and call that on time source game, that starts every time source attached to time source game. And there's one more thing that I'm not doing that I need to do, and that is to go into something such as the end step event of just all entities. And I need to, again, iterate over... Where's end step? Step, end step. I need to iterate over the list of timers. And I'm going to iterate over it backwards for reasons that you'll see soon. So I equals ds list size self dot timers minus 1. I is greater than or equal to 0. I minus minus. We're going to say if time source... what is the function for... It's like time source status. Time source get state. Self.timers index I. If the time source state is equal to time source GameMaker, go away. What is... Why are we having... Why are we highlighting my entire code window for no reason? This is a very strange day for bugs in GameMaker. Time source state... stopped, I believe, is when it's gone off and when it's finished. But anyway, if the state of this timer is equal to time source state stopped, we can time source delete, destroy. It's always either delete or destroy self.timers index I, and we're also going to need to ds-list delete the value at position I in the timers list. And the reason that we're iterating over this list backwards is that if you were to iterate over a list forwards and delete from it, you would have a wonderful error where the size of the list would shrink while you were trying to iterate over it. And if you happen to get unlucky and delete the last element, then you would try to run the loop on a element that is not in the array. And if you were to delete something in the middle of the loop while iterating over it forward, your loop counter would skip over the next value, which is not what you want. So I'm going to iterate over it backwards so that if you delete an element from the array, you only affect the things that are in the list in front of it. Now if I pause the game, our timers are all on the I believe, half-second interval that they should be on. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3. Okay, so it's 1 second interval. And my bullets are still fine for the same reason. Okay, so what would this be? I'll split this in two. I will say the end step event can we can delete time sources when they're finished from the managed time source system, and we can also say we're going to commit the game time source is paused when you pause the game, and you don't have to worry about anything like that. For what it's worth, the DT macro. Oh no, that's not what determined this. But for what it's worth, in the first step event and that sort of thing, if the game is in the pause menu, it just kicks out of that anyway, so the timers weren't ticking down there. But I do think it's nicer to actually just be able to pause the time source like this. Right, so that's that. I am going to make this, I think, this video, because this actually ended up taking longer than I thought it would, because we were playing a little bit of catch up here. So this is going to be 0.14, and the release that this is going to be is, that was Control-Shift-F, not Control-Shift-G. Control-Shift-G is what brings us to GitHub. I can create myself a new release. This can be for tag 014. I should probably actually push these changes to GitHub. Like this. Have I been naming these? Have I been just calling them like week 14 or... I haven't been creating releases. Wow, okay, I should get on that. The only thing I have right now are tags. I'm gonna... What I did in Bombardier was I made the release when I published the videos, but I haven't been doing that this time, clearly. Alright, I'll make the releases when I publish the videos. I want them to be in approximately correct order. So, that's gonna do it for today. This is a little bit of an unusual episode. If GameMaker adds new features in the future that I really want to use and I really think will save me some time in the future, I will do that, but I don't really think that I'm going to be doing that a lot in this game, because I think I have pretty much everything I need to make this game in GameMaker as it is, without too much trouble. Next time, we will be going back to Sprint 2 and implementing the title screen. I'd like to get as much of this title screen done in this video as possible, like in the next video as possible, because I've spent a month on menu stuff, and I'd really like to get back to gameplay stuff. In the future, if I do something like this, I would probably just consolidate all the menu stuff into like a single video that's just like live stream duration, so that I don't have to hold up progress for like 6 weeks while I just fiddle around with menus. But that's a problem for future me to solve. So, my name is Michael. I like wizards and dragons and making games. If you want the code for this, look for the GitHub repository down in the video description. Otherwise, I try to post about 2 game dev videos a week, 1 of these and 1 tutorial. So if you're interested in any of that, feel free to subscribe. As you can see, I do like to occasionally use the material that I cover in those tutorials in actual games. I guess in this particular case, I also discuss some of the limitations of time sources in GameMaker in situations where they wouldn't actually make your job a whole lot easier to manage. For example, when you have very complicated things such as the like the burn duration statuses and that sort of thing. But you may judge those on your own. That's a big part of the motivation for doing these series. I have a Patreon, so if you'd like to contribute towards these videos being made, look for links to that in all the usual places. You can see some fun things like your name in the credits. And about once a month, I like to post a preview of my future plans, so if any of that sort of thing appeals to you, feel free to pledge, and I would definitely appreciate it. I hope you all found that interesting, and I will see you all later. Okay, one thing that I got a comment on and forgot to respond to is that I believe in the settings menu, someone pointed out that I have accidentally inserted 2 1920 1080 resolutions into the default screen sizes. I'm gonna get rid of that. Yeah, that doesn't belong there. Thank you for whoever pointed that out, saving me some confusion later on down the line. I am just gonna throw this in at the end of this video instead of having to put it off till later and probably forgetting about it, and I will see you all later. Special thanks to Zenjamin, Then Nothing Happens, Squarecrow, Sindra Larson, Posho, Gunnar Clovis, GameMaker, Edward Holt, DJ Gibbles, and Army Armbruster for supporting these videos. If you want to see your name in the credits or hear yourself shouted out at the end like this, head on over to the Patreon page down in the video description to join the fun.